Hey, listening squirrels. I hope I can get through all this. This is part 3, and there's still like 13 pages. Let's see. Love is arrogant, and I nourished a belief that even I might succeed where Jeffrey failed. Gummy bears in my mouth, sorry. You were so young you were not likely to be easily won by any other if such a man had asked in vain, and a conviction gradually took possession of me that you had understood, had loved, and were yet waiting for me. A month seemed an eternity to wait, but I left myself no moment for despair and soon turned my face to Cuba, finding renewed hope on the way. Gabriel went with me, told me how Attila had searched for me, and failing to find me had gone back to make ready for my coming. How she had tried to be all I desired, and how unworthy I was of her. This was well, but the mention of your name was better, and much close questioning gave me the scene which he remembered, because Attila had chidden him sharply for his disclosures to yourself. Knowing you so well, I gathered much from trifles which were nothing in Gabriel's eyes. I felt that regard for me, if nothing warmer, had prompted your interest in them, and out of the facts given me by Faith and Gabriel, I built myself a home, which I have inhabited as a guest till now, when I know myself its master and welcome its dear mistress. So, my darling, oh no, why did she marry? Oh. He bent to give her tender greeting, but Sylvia arrested him. Not yet, Adam, not yet. Go on before it's too late to tell me as you wish. He thought it was some maidenly scruple, and thought he smiled at it. And though he smiled at it, he respected it for the same coyness. In the midst of all her whims had always been one of her attractions in his eye. Shy thing, I will tame you yet and draw you to me as confidingly as I drew the bird to hop into my hand and eat. You must not fear me, Sylvia, else I shall grow tyrannical, for I hate fear, and like to trample on whatever dares not fill its place bravely, sure that it will receive its due as trustfully as these little mosses sit among the clouds and find a spring to feed them even in the rock. Now I will make a speedy end of this, pleasant as it is to sit here feeling myself no longer a solitary waif. I shall spare you the stormy scenes I passed through with Attila, because I do not dare to think of my Cleopatra while I hold my fine spirit Ariel in my arms. She had done her best, but had I been still heart-free, I never could have married her. She is one of those tameless natures which only God can govern. I dared not, even when I thought I loved her, for much as I love power, I love truth more. I told her this, heard prayers, reproaches, threats, and denunciations, tried to leave her kindly, and then was ready for my fate with you. But I was not to have my will so easily. I had fallen into the net, and was not to leave it till the scourging had been given. So like that other wandering Christian, I cried out, submitted, and was the meeker for it. I had to wait a little before the ship sailed. I would not stay at El Labyrinto, Gabriel's home, for Attila was there. And though the fever raged at Havana, I felt secure in my hitherto unbroken health. I returned there and paid the penalty, for weeks of suffering taught me I could not trifle with this body of mine, sturdy as it seemed. Oh, Adam, who took care of you? Where did you lie and suffer all that time? Never fret yourself concerning that. I was not neglected. A sister of the Sacred Heart took excellent care of me, and a hospital is as good as a palace when one neither knows nor cares where he is. It went hardly with me, I believe, but being resolved to live, I fought it through. Death looked at me, had compassion, and passed by. There is a Haitian proverb which must comfort you if I am a gaunt ghost of my former self. A lean, free man is better than a fat slave. There comes the first smile I've seen, but my next bit of news will bring a frown, I think. When I was well enough to creep out, I learned that Ottila was married. You heard the rumors, doubtless, but not the name, for Gabriel's and mine were curiously blended in many minds by the suddenness of my disappearance, and his appearance as the bridegroom. It was like her. She had prepared for me as if sure I was to fill the place I had left, hoping that this confidence of hers would have its due effect upon me. It did try me sorely, but an experience once over is as if it had never been, as far as regret or indecision is concerned. Therefore, wedding gowns and imperious women failed to move me. To be left a groomless bride stung that fiery pride of hers more than many an actual shame or sin would have done. People would pity her, would see her lost, deride her wilful folly. Gabriel loved her as she desired to be loved, blindly and passionately. Few knew of our later bond, many of our betrothal. Why not let the world believe me, the rejected party, come back for a last appeal? I had avoided all whom I once knew, for I loathed the place. No one had discovered me at the hospital. She thought me gone. She boldly took the step, married the poor boy, left Cuba before I was myself again, and won herself an empty victory which I shall never disturb. How strange! Yet I can believe it of her. She looked a woman who would dare do anything. Then you came back, Adam, to find me? What led you here, hoping so much and knowing so little? Did you ever know me do anything in the accustomed way? Do I not always aim straight at the thing I want and pursue it by the shortest road? It fails often, and I go back to the slower, surer way, but my own is always tried first. As involuntarily as I hurled myself down that slope, as if storming a fort instead of meeting my sweetheart. That is a pretty old word, beloved of better men than I, so let me use it once. Among the first persons I met on landing was a friend of your father's. He was just driving away in hot haste, but catching a glimpse of the familiar face, I bethought me that it was the reason for summer travel. You might be away, and no one would satisfy me. He might know, and time be saved. I ask one question. Where are the Yules? Sorry, trying to swallow these bears. He answered as he vanished, the young people are all at the mountains. That was enough, and congratulating myself on the forethought, which would save me some 100 miles of needless delay, away I went. And for days have been searching for you everywhere on that side of these hills which I know so well. But no Yules had passed, and feeling sure you were on this side, I came. Not around, but straight over, for this seemed a royal road to my love, and here I have found her, waiting for me, by the way. Now, Sylvia, are your doubts all answered? your fears all laid, your heart at rest on mine? As the time drew nearer, Sylvia's task daunted her. Warwick was so confident, so glad and tender over her, it seemed like pronouncing the death doom to say those hard words. It is too late. While she struggled to find some expression that should tell all kindly yet entirely, Adam, seeming to read some hint of her trouble, asked, with that gentleness which now overlaid his former abruptness, and was the more alluring for the contrast, "Have I been too arrogant a lover, too sure of happiness, too blind to my small deserts? Sylvia, have I misunderstood the greeting you have given me?" "Yes, Adam, utterly." He knit his brows, his eye grew anxious, his content seemed rudely broken, but his content. But still hopefully he said, "You mean that absence has changed you, that you do not love me as you did, and pity made you kind? Well, I receive the disappointment, but I do not relinquish my desire. What has been may be. Let me try again to earn you. Teach me to be humble, patient, all that I should be to make myself more dear to you. Something disturbs you. Be frank with me. I have shown you all my heart. What have you to show me in return? Only this." She freed herself entirely from his hold and held up her hand before him. He did not see the ring. He thought she gave him all he asked, and with a glow of gratitude extended both his own to take it. Then she saw that delay was worse than weak, and though she trembled, she spoke out bravely, ending his suspense at once. "Adam, I do not love you as I did, nor can I wish or try to bring it back, because I'm married." He sprang up as if shot through the heart. Nor could a veritable bullet from her hand have daunted him with a more intense dismay than those 3 words. An instant's incredulity, then conviction came to him, and he met it like a man, for though his face whitened and his eyes burned with an expression that wrung her heart, he demanded steadily, "To whom?" This was the hardest question of all, for well she knew the name would wound the deeper for its dearness, and while it lingered pitifully upon her lips, its owner answered for himself. Clear and sweet came up the music of the horn, bringing them a familiar air they all loved and had often sung together. Warwick knew it instantly, felt the hard truth, but rebelled against it, put out his arm as if to ward it off as he exclaimed, with real anguish in countenance and voice, "Oh, Sylvia, it's not Geoffrey." "Yes." Then, as if all strength had gone out of her, she dropped down upon the mossy margin of the spring and covered up her face, feeling that the first sharpness of a pain like this was not for human eyes to witness. How many minutes passed she couldn't tell. The stillness of the spot remained unbroken by any sound but the whisper of the wind, and in this silence Sylvia found time to marvel at the calmness which came to her. Self had been forgotten in surprise and sympathy, and still her one thought was how to comfort Warwick. She had expected some outburst of feeling, some gust of anger or despair, but neither sob nor sigh, reproach nor regret reached her, and soon she stole an anxious glance to see how it went with him. He was standing where she left him, both hands locked together till they were white with the passionate pressure, his eyes fixed on some distant object, with a regard as imploring as unseen, and through those windows of the soul he looked out darkly, not despairingly, but as if sure that somewhere there was help for him, and he waited for it with a stern patience more terrible to watch than the most tempestuous grief. Sylvia could not bear it, and remembering that her confession had not yet been made, seized that instant for the purpose, prompted by an instinct which assured her that the knowledge of her pain would help him to bear his own. She told him all, and ended saying, "Now, Adam, come to me, and let me try to comfort you." Sylvia was right, for through the sorrowful bewilderment that brought a brief eclipse of hope and courage, sympathy reached him like a friendly hand to uphold him till he found the light again. While speaking, she had seen the immobility that frightened her break up, and Warwick's whole face flush with quiver with the rush of emotions controllable no longer. But the demonstration which followed was one she had never thought to see from him, for when she stretched her hands to him with that tender invitation, she saw the deep eyes fill and overflow. Then he thrust himself down before her, for the first time in her short life showed her that sad type of human suffering, a man weeping like a woman. Warwick was one of those whose passions, as his virtues, were in unison with the powerful body they inhabited, and in such a crisis as the present, but one of two reliefs were possible to him: either wrathful denunciation, expostulation, and despair, or the abandon of child. Against the former he had been struggling dumbly till Sylvia's words had turned the tide, and too entirely natural to feel a touch of shame at that which is not weakness but a strength, too wise to reject so safe an outlet for so dangerous a grief, he yielded to it, letting the merciful magic of tears quench the fire, wash the first bitterness away, and leave reproaches only writ in water. It was better so, and Sylvia acknowledged it within herself as she sat mute and motionless, softly touching the brown hair scattered on the moss, her poor consolation silenced by the pathos of that sight, while through it all rose and fell the fitful echo of the horn, in every truth a sweet reminder not to stray away and lose herself. An hour ago it would have been a welcome sound, for peak after peak gave back the strain, and airy voices whispered it until the faintest murmur died. But now she let it soar and sigh half heard, for audible to her alone still came its sad accompaniment of bitter human tears. To Warwick it was far more, for music, the comforter, laid her balm on his sore heart, as no mortal pity could have done, and wrought the miracle which changed the friend who seemed to have robbed him of his love to an unconscious Orpheus who subdued the savage and harmonized the man. Soon he was himself again, for to those who harbor the strong virtues with patient zeal, no lasting ill can come, no affliction can wholly crush, no temptation wholly vanquish. He rose with eyes the clearer for their stormy rain, twice a man for having dared to be a child again, humbler and happier for the knowledge that neither vain resentment nor unjust accusation had defrauded of its dignity the heavy hour that left him desolate but not degraded. "I am comforted, Sylvia, rest assured of that, and now there is little more to say, but one thing to do. I shall not see your husband yet, and leave you to tell him what seems best, for with the instinct of an animal I always go away to outlive my hurts alone. But remember that I acquit you of blame, and believe that I will yet be happy in your happiness. I know if Jeffrey were here, he would let me do this because he has suffered as I suffer now. Bending, he gathered her to an embrace as different from that other as despair is from delight. And while he held her there, crowding in one short minute all the pain and passion of a year, she heard a low but exceeding bitter cry, "Oh, my Sylvia, it's hard to give you up." Then with a solemn satisfaction which assured her, as it did himself, he spoke out clear and loud, "Thank God for the merciful hereafter in which we may retrieve the blunders we make here." With that he left her, never turning till the burden so joyfully cast down had been resumed. Then, staff and hat in hand, he paused on the margin of that granite cup, to him a cup of sorrow, and looked into its depths again. Clouds were trooping eastward, but in that pause the sun glanced full on Warwick's figure, lifting his powerful head into a flood of light as he waved his hand to Sylvia with a gesture of courage and good cheer. The look, the act, the memories that brought her made her heart ache with a sharper pang than pity, and filled her eyes with tears of impotent regret as she turned her head as if to chide the blithe clamor of the horn. When she looked again, the figure and the sunshine were both gone, leaving her alone and in the shadow. Finally, the end of chapter 13. Sorry it took me so long. Chapter 14 is called A Fireside Fete. I guess. Fete. Alrighty. Y'all have a lovely evening. 7:47 right now. On hump day. Whip Wednesday. I gotta get in here to about 1,000,000 of them. Love y'all. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Bye-bye.